Welcome to the Black Father's Pulse, the podcast where fatherhood meets purpose. I'm Dr. Alvin Thomas, clinical psychologist and professor, here to guide you through the multifaceted journey of Black fatherhood. Please note, the views expressed here are my own and not those of my employer. But get ready to dive into the dynamic world of Black fatherhood, where we celebrate the highs, tackle the lows, and share plenty of laughs along the way. Let's keep the pulse of fatherhood beating strong and vibrant. Some of us have history thrust upon us. Some intentionally create history, and still others combine the two approaches. Black fatherhood continues to be a very exciting topic because it so easily inflames passions from those who refuse to let go of the pernicious narrative of the absent, uninvolved Black father as the norm for all Black fatherhood. The discussion about Black fatherhood also incites passions because Black fathers are intentionally pushing against the negative stereotypes and making themselves and their role more visible. This act of social activism occurs even while dads are navigating the myriad challenges of parenthood. Today's guest is one of those names that have been etched in our social consciousness where fatherhood is concerned, partially because of a very beautiful viral video between himself and his toddler son a couple of years ago, demonstrating that indeed Black fathers are engaged in the softer, nurturing, fun activities of raising young children.
Yeah.
Professionally known as DJ Pryor, Destin J. Pryor is an American actor and stand-up comedian. In January 2019, Pryor participated in the CBS Diversity Sketch Comedy Showcase. He has acted in short films. He's a passionate father. DJ Pryor has two sons, Jabari and Kingston, and a daughter. In June 2019, Pryor and his son Kingston were featured in a Denny's commercial for Father's Day. The Wired magazine also recognized Pryor as a dadfluencer. I had never heard of it. I thought it was a disease. I had never heard of that before, dadfluencer. So he'll probably tell us a little bit about what this dadfluencer thing is.
Right. Right.
At the close of 2019, DJ Pryor was also a guest on Dateline NBC's A Toast to 2019 and Dick Clark's New Year's Rocking Eve 2020 to commemorate the highlights of 2019. I want to welcome DJ Pryor to the show, to the podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us.
Yes, sir. Dr. Thomas, I appreciate you having me, man.
So one of the first things I want to get out of the gate, because I think much of America is probably still in love with your son. In our minds, he's still that little kid, that little tyke who's having this deep, seemingly very deep conversation with you, and you could see it on his face that he's engrossed, like he's really thinking, and we have no idea what's going on. But tell us a little bit about that viral video.
I think, people saw it, in the time when it came out. There was so much going on in the media at the time, as always, and Trump mania was going on at the time. And so that's all you saw. But at this time, this day when we recorded it, it was the grand finale of Empire. And so me and my wife were talking about it, about how they were going to, have to do the show because all this stuff had happened. And so we're talking. I'm sitting on one couch, she's sitting on another. He's sitting on the floor. He's going back and forth. He's listening to us. I said, you feel what I'm saying, man? He said, mm-hmm. I said, well, get up here and tell me about it. And he gets up there, crosses his little feet. And I knew right then, I was like, oh, this is funny. I was like, get the camera. This is funny. And so she records. And I mean, if you look at the video, he's letting me talk.
Right.
And then I stop and he's nom, 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 nom. And then he feels like I'm getting. He's like, hey, nom, nom, nom. He's really excited. It was crazy because we actually shot that May 4th, 2019, and she posted it June 4th, 2019. I had no clue that she was going to do that because we were doing like home movies, so I thought.
Right.
But she had other plans, and so it just went crazy.
How has your family reacted to this internet sensation?
It's crazy. I think it's everybody who didn't want to claim you before, now they claim you. You know what I mean? Hey,
that's all your cousins came out.
Yeah, all my cousins came out. Hey, I'm your cousin. I think everybody was proud, man. Everybody was really proud. People that I ain't never heard from before. My great grandfather has 42 kids. And
Ooh.
yeah, 42 kids. And I'm sure at least 35 of them came out the woodworks when, when this video went viral. Yeah, man, I'm your cousin. Yeah, I saw you did that dentist commercial. Hey, I'm going through a real hard time right now. I was wondering if you could bless me, and yeah. So it was,
Let me.
yeah, it was all that.
Yeah, because of course everybody assumes that you're making $1 million every
Yeah,
year
exactly.
coming
I
off of
had
that
no clue.
commercial.
I was still broke. I was still broke. Yeah.
uh, how would you say your son Kingston thinks and reacts to that video now that he's a little bit older?
I might be surfing the web or something. We may watch it every once in a while. We'll watch it and we'll see it'll come across and we'll turn it on and we'll laugh. I feel like every time I watch it, I notice something new every
Mm,
time. And he'll chuckle at it, but I still doesn't think it hit him
right,
to know how popular it is. You know what I
right.
mean? Because he's still a kid, so he doesn't register to him numbers like the numbers that it's doing. You know what I mean? Or it's done. Yeah.
What's the numbers right now?
We got bored one time, and I was like, okay, well, that's 100 millionaire. Well, that's
Right.
100 millionaire. That's 100
Wow.
millionaire. Well, we're already at 400 million, 400 million, 500 million. That's half a billion. So last I checked, we were at a half a billion. It may be at a billion now. Who
Right.
knows? But I ain't counting again. That's for sure.
You don't count. Yeah, I think it's just one of those viral videos that is evergreen. Every
Yes.
time you see it, just
Yes.
brings a smile to your face, reminds
Correct.
you that the world is full of joy
Correct.
and the innocence of that little kid laughing and having that deep
Yes.
conversation. And I
Yes.
think another thing that makes it evergreen and that continues to provoke interest is that you see it's a black father having the
Yes.
conversation, who you expect to see.
Right. That's not how you expect it, which is so crazy to me that was the narrative. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, it was like people were responding and you want to say thank you, but you almost feel insulted at the same time because you're like,
yeah,
oh, that's so good that you're doing that. It's like, am I not supposed to do that? Is
yep.
is it not supposed to be? So I think that for me, it was a bittersweet because it was
Mm,
like, somebody asked me, well, how do you feel about being able to represent black fathers, like being a spokesperson for black fathers. I said, I mean, I think it's great. I'm honored. It's a privilege, but I think it'll be even better when I no longer have to defend us.
yep.
That's more the gift for me when I no longer have to say, because no other race has to do that.
That's exactly.
You know what I mean? So why do I have to keep defending that? The remainder of my life as a father. You know what I mean? That I'm involved. Look at what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I
Right,
didn't do that for y'all to give me the credit or the glory. I was being a dad. I
right.
was having fun with my son, and the world just gravitated to it. So it is a bit of a bittersweet thing, but I'm glad that it opened up for a bigger conversation, a much larger
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, and I am
Uh,
proud of that.
no, I'm happy because I think had that video not surfaced, we might have never met. We might have never
Right.
had this
Correct.
conversation.
Correct.
And I know that you're doing work around fathers, but I want to talk a little bit about your comedy and the work that you're doing in the comedy. As a
Mhm.
comedian, how do you balance the demands of your career with the responsibilities of being a father? And second part of that is, have you found humor to be a successful tool in navigating those parenting challenges?
So your first question, I think I have not lost sight of the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this 21 years. I started off at 15, so I obviously had no kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was about me and what I could do for my career. And somebody told me you could get rich telling jokes, and I was like, oh, okay, well here it is. And so obviously being the funniest guy in the room, being the most talented, being the one who's going to bring the house down, and making great money
Mm-hmm.
and getting women. Those were all the goals in the beginning. Now the spectrum is broadened.
Mm-hmm.
My kids, setting my kids up, and things I talk about on stage now. It's all the main thing. I'm a dad first.
Right.
Before I was an entertainer and a comic first. Now I'm a dad first, and um, these things that I experienced as a father actually play into my stand up now. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I'm in a new place in my life. Those who followed me for the last 21 years have seen me evolve to talking about things that, I would never say I talked about kid stuff because I was always older than what I was. I was always
Right.
talking like I was grown at 15. I was cussing. And then going all the way to these years and now seeing me transition to a husband and a
Right.
father. I think just keeping the main thing, making sure that I'm intentional about parenting. Yes, I keep that before career, and career is blessed because I'm happy. And I think for you being a comic, you have to be in a good someone in a good space to create at some point. Um, and so that's what I think. Now there have been some that have created from a dark place. I prefer to pull from it. Now comedy comes from a dark place, but where I am currently in my life, I'm pulling from a happy place that is my life. So, and then second part is, yeah, comedy. In the darkest days, man, jokes. I make jokes with my kids, even when I'm dealing with them on something serious.
Right.
I'm a jokester, and I like having fun because I want to create this safe space where my kids can feel like they can make mistakes because they're learning, as am I. This is my first time ever being a parent. This is your first time ever being a kid. This is your first time ever being my kid. So just allowing each other the partnership of grace.
Right.
That's kind of how comedy plays in my house. And so comedy is the liaison between that space of grace. That's how comedy plays in my house. It's really healthy and it's really good because my kids know they can bring me anything. Now, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll go like, okay, I won't go to you. They'll go, Sam, let's go talk to her. And then let's go talk to mommy. And I'll be sitting right there and they won't come to me. So because they know who they can get well from.
Right. They don't care about your feelings.
They don't care about my feelings. So, right, yeah. But comedy has done its job in my home. It has done more than its job in my home, yeah.
So I hear you say something about this parenting is a partnership, that you and your child have this partnership.
Right.
And in a previous episode, I was talking to another father who was talking about that relationship between himself and his two younger children, how it is this space where they get to share views and to speak out of their emotions and to say exactly how they're feeling. Even when that might not be what he wants to hear, he has to hear it and to respect it and to then be able to help them work through whatever he wants them to work through to get to the points that he wants them to get to. And I think of my father's generation and some men today who still reflect my father's generation, thinking, you do what now?
You do what?
Is a what? It's not a partnership. This is a dictatorship.
Right.
I'm the dad in here, the man of this house, and you do what I say when I say, and for as long as I say. I could see some of these men saying, well, there's no way your kids can take you seriously. Obviously, your kids don't take you seriously. How would you respond to that? Like, are you the disciplinarian in the family?
So it's funny that you brought this up, right? I actually saw a video today, and a lady was talking about this very issue. And the example that she gave was her daughter. She has a preteen daughter, and she would tell her to do dishes, and the daughter would say, I don't want to do the dishes. And she says, what you're supposed to do in parenting is you say to the child, well, what can I do that will inspire you to do it? Now, let me put this out here, okay? If I tell you to do the dishes, you do the dishes, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think partnerships look like my kids know, like here's how I get my son. My son's 13 now, like my oldest is 13. When I had this conversation with him, I'm not having the same conversation with him that I'm having with Kingston because they're in different places.
Yeah.
So with him, it's going, hey man, you decide at this point, because I only have a few more years with you, you decide what our relationship is going to be, right? These are the crucial years. Are we going to be the best of friends or are we going to clash? Now, understand this. At the end, I have wisdom. I have money, right? I have wisdom. I have the provision. You need both of these, right? So the advantage I have on you is daddy gonna win either way. So now you can partner with me. The saying is, if you can't beat him, join him. You can't beat me, so partner with me. Therefore, if I tell you to do something, follow my instructions. Not only for my benefit, but for your benefit. And that's us being partners. I give you the instructions, you follow it, and we both benefit. I ain't have to do what I ain't want to do, and you benefited because you're safe and you're provided for. But when you step outside of that ram of my covering, then you release yourself to the elements of consequences.
You go past that.
I do, right?
Out of my covering.
Yeah, you sound like this. So I tell them the importance of understanding what my job is as your father.
Right.
My job is to cover you, right? My job is not just to buy you stuff. My job is to cover you. You have my provision, and my provision sometimes doesn't mean it's not in monetary. My provision is just in wisdom. If I tell you, hey, don't do, hey, you should do, right? That's my wisdom. Heed to it. But if you should decide that you're wiser than me, you're smarter than me, then cool. Then I got to release you to the elements or all consequences. And when you get that, you got to feel that. And I got to let you feel that. So the partnership is, I got to let you grow. I got to give you the space to kind of mess up a little bit, right? Okay, cool. Did it hurt? Did it sting? Okay, come on back home. You know, I gave him the example of the prodigal son when I was like, what made the prodigal son so cocky when he was like, I'm ready. And dad was like, no, you ain't. He's like, man, give me my stuff. Notice the dad wasn't like, no, because he could have said, I'm not gonna give it to you. You're gonna damage yourself. He's like, all right, you sure? Yep. All right, here you go. Because he understood that the son had to go get that experience to come back to appreciate home. That's where I'm at. Like, I wouldn't recommend it. Right. You want it? Here you go. I'm gonna give you what you think you want. So that's what I mean when I say partnership. Not this new age generation where they like, we gotta make a deal with the kids. I ain't making no deal with no kids. They name ain't on no deed. I'm not making no deal with nobody. What?
So what if a kid, let's say, how old is Kingston now?
Kingston is 6. He'll be 7 in November.
So he's a little bit young. So you probably would swoop in to save him a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Your other son, who's a little bit older, approaching preteen. What if he doesn't want to do something that you know is going to be harmful to him? How do you get him around to either doing or reconsidering?
So he wants to. So I make sure I understand your question. He wants to do something that will be harmful to him.
Yeah.
Okay. I think.
Let's say he wants to he wants to get a face tattoo.
Okay, good one. Okay. First question: who's paying for it? Let's start there.
All of his Christmas money that Nana gave him, he saved. He has the money.
Okay, he got the money.
It may not be the best of tattoo artists, but he has some money for a face tattoo. Is going to get a little teardrop or something under his eye.
You know, I think right now I'm at, like I said, because of that age, I'm going to. You have no choice, right? But I'm the guy who will make it look like I'm gonna lead you. I'm gonna let you go through with it. You know, just because I want you to develop the power of choice. Right? I'll let you think that this is about to go through. I wouldn't recommend it. And I'll give you all of the good and bad because I want you to have both to be able to weigh. And hopefully the reflection of how I've raised you would have smacked some wisdom into you.
Right.
And so I often do test that with certain decisions. I'll see what you're going to do with it. And usually he comes out, he's like, Dad, I thought about it. And I go, yes. You know, but there are times where he's too smart for his own good, and he'll go and do whatever. And he's like that lost lamb. And you go, okay, well, you where you are. How did that feel? Okay, and now you gotta, he got in trouble a couple of months ago in school, and so I told him, I said, well, you haven't been doing your work. You got in trouble at school. I said, so when I get back home, you gonna pay me a fine. He said, a fine? So yeah, damn, I'm gonna do that. Well, I don't care. Is pay me the fine, or you on punishment, and you gonna get a whooping. Well, Dad, why you? Well, the reason why is because in the real world, you will go in front of a judge. When you do something illegal, you're gonna go in front of a judge, and guess what you're gonna have to do? You're gonna have to pay a fine. And if you don't pay that fine, if he don't send you to jail, he's gonna give you a fine, a hefty one, depending on what you did. And when it's time to pay that fine, you come back in front of him, and that fine is not paid, there will be consequences. So I want him to start to realize the monetary, even in because kids understand the value of money. Right. Oh man, this is literally costing me, and that's what I want him to get is that mindset is that bad decisions cost, good decisions cost. They have one has a payoff and one costs. So I want him to understand that power. So sometimes I'll weigh him, see where his head is. Most of the time he comes out on top. But there are those times because he's 13, he'll,
Yeah, that's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good
I was guilty of it. You know what I mean? My dad would tell me something like, "Come on, man. Go ahead. Hey, Daddy."
Yeah, no, that's a very good time. Do you set up long before the infraction, let's call it that, happens? have you set up the potential consequence for it? So for example, you say that there's going to be a fine. Does
Right.
he know that, hey, from the beginning of the semester, we had talked about that if your grades don't come up,
Hmm.
that there's going to be X or Y fine, or there's going to be X or Y consequence for it.
Yeah,
He knows
most of
that
the
from
time.
ahead of.
Yeah,
Okay,
most of the time he goes in knowing what the other
the
side of the consequence looks
consequences.
like. Yep, the other side of the decision looks like. So that means when you make it, right? I remember one time I had him do a thing, and I told him what it was, and I had him sign his signature, and I signed mine.
Yep, a
That
contract.
means you, yeah. So he came back, and I said, "That's whose signature is that? Mine." Okay, so you remembered. So you went in knowing, and you did. That's how much you didn't care. Cool. Well, now you forced my hand to move, right? Because you looked me in the eye, and you deliberately said I could take this risk.
Yeah,
It was worth it to you. You took
and
it.
and that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I
You
can't
take the
be.
risk.
You made a
Yeah,
decision. I'm not mad that you made a decision. You made one.
the
Cool. I'm
contract
not
has
mad.
to be enforced.
Yep. But I have to do what I said.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have to follow through. You know what I mean?
Otherwise,
Because
otherwise you won't believe me.
you won't believe
You
me.
won't me.
It's my bluff all the time. Hey, you ain't gonna do nothing. Because that's
Yeah.
all the time. His mother. When he stays with his mom. She would do that. She would say something, or she would do something, and she's like, I don't understand why. And I would explain to her, like, with men, you can't. Right? Girls, you could tweak and whatever. Boys, you cannot. You have to. If you say it, you gotta follow through with a boy. With a man child, you gotta follow through. And I know, and I see the difference between having my boys and having my little girl. There were things when they were 3, I could say to them, and they'd be like, "We gonna test it." My little girl, oh my gosh, that's gonna happen to me. Well, no, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It's so different.
They'll test different things though.
They'll test different things.
I
They
think that's
will.
what I think that's where the difference
Yeah,
lies.
yeah.
What they will test, and even like you have two boys and you have 2 boys and 1 girl.
Hmm.
I'm sure when Kingston gets to 12, 13, he's
Yeah,
going to test very different things than his
yeah.
brother.
Very different. Yeah, I agree.
The sister's going to test very different things from King.
Yep.
So the personality issues is going to lead to different
Yeah,
testings. But
yeah.
I think there's also a gender element as well.
Yeah, I think a little part of it plays to it. And I tell them, I just want them to have the power of choice, even if I don't agree
Yeah.
with their decisions,
Yeah.
right? The most important thing to me is for my kids to know that dad loves you regardless.
Yeah.
And that's the most important element that I want them to know. Is my love is non-negotiable. It's here. And that's a safe place for y'all.
No, and I think that is the role of every parent, black,
Mhm.
white, polka dot, green,
Correct.
striped, whatever you are.
Correct.
You see it in the animal kingdom that no
Yes.
matter what happens, the parent animal is always standing there ready to defend, even if the little panda bear did something foolish or
Yeah.
something crazy.
Yeah.
The mother panda bear or the father panda bear is always standing right there ready to defend
Right.
we see it with our pets. They're always
Correct.
ready to defend their young. I think
Right.
our responsibility is not just to defend our young from forces outside, but also from forces within. We
Correct.
want to do from childish curiosity and inquisitiveness, which is good. You want
Right.
to support that, but you
Right.
also want to support it to a point where it's not potentially damaging, life ending to them. And they should always feel like you are that safe space. I love whenever I hear fathers talk about allowing their children to make decisions, it makes me happy because your children are not always going to be around you.
Correct.
And when they're not around, they have to make decisions.
They have to make
And if
decisions.
they've not had the opportunity to make decisions and fail, make decisions and succeed,
Yeah.
they will be unequipped to make those decisions and will either allow somebody else to make it for them, sometimes to their detriment, or
Right.
they will make it without the proper understanding and
Correct.
context or structure for
Agreed.
making decisions. So
Agreed.
yes, Kingston does need to learn how to stand up for himself and say, "Nope, no, Dad, I don't want to do that." And
Yeah.
okay, that's cool,
Yeah.
but we have to. I know you don't want to brush your teeth. I know you
Yeah.
don't want to don't take a bath. And
Yeah.
here's the reasoning. Here's the pros and the cons, and here's why I need you to take it. And
Right.
eventually, either you agree or we have to figure out a way to get you to that.
Right.
But you have the ability, the strength, the wherewithal to be able to advocate for yourself
Correct.
and to
Correct.
make your decisions.
Correct.
As a comedian, it has to be here. But how do you use humor? Have you found humor as a useful tool in navigating those challenges of doing some of this work?
In my experience, it really does. I think even when I talk about parenting or the challenges of parenting on stage, I think I allow people to see another element to it, that parenting is fun.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fun experience, and it is a funny experience. Just like I make fun of my dad all the time. My father was in the military, and he was saved.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people come from a Christian background or what you even know what that means, but being in the military and saved,
It's a
those
difficult
stirred
thing.
up, that's a different type of life. He would mix the army and Jesus together. Oh my gosh, what are you saying? We got
Give us an
lectures.
example. Give us an
Oh man,
example.
he would give lectures. He would give lecture about cleanliness. You clean this house. You know what I mean? But he would tell us line up. He would tell us line up like soldiers. Line up front and center. That's how he would talk to us. Line up front and center. You know, and how many know that cleanliness is next to godliness? Mm-hmm. So the person that didn't clean up his house must work for the devil. Because if it's dirty here, that must mean that God can't live here, right? God can't live here. So who didn't take out the trash? Because that means you work for the enemy. So like, what, dude? No, I thought trash went out on Tuesday. It goes out on, like, dude, chill. I got my days mixed up. That's it. But that's what it is. That's the kind of parent you get
Right.
when you get army dad and saved dad, and they're the
Right.
same dad. That's an experience, man. It's an experience. So I guess now me hearing those things
Right.
still makes me laugh, but it does speak to my father. He had the things, how he tried to embed things in us. He
Mm-hmm.
felt like the way he would embed things in his soldiers, how much more should
Mm.
I put in my children?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I'd make fun of those things because while they're funny, it's deeper than that. It is a man, and he was a single dad at
Mm-hmm.
that. So having that element of having to raise children
Right.
to be strong and think and consider God in their ways. All those things were really deep. So I comedy, I make fun of him in front of him. You know what I mean?
How does he respond to that?
It's funny. You gotta watch my special, man. I got my special daddy issues. I make this joke, and I'm telling that very joke I just said,
Right.
and I'm doing it, and I'm performing a bit. And some said, "Don't look down," but I looked down anyway, and I saw him. And he was like, and immediately, I turned into a child. I was scared on the stage. I didn't want to finish the bit. I was
Right.
like, "Will my dad come up here and whoop me in front of everybody?" Like, immediately, I wanted to stop the joke. And I said that I was like, "Guys, I'm trying to finish this bit, but oh Lord," I said, "I'm trying to finish this bit, but my dad is looking at me, and I don't even want to finish it." And he was like, "Yeah, good job." He clapped to let me know he was good, man. But it was just a funny thing to watch my dad watch me talk about him to a crowd, and they laughing. It was great.
That
It was
sounds that
great.
sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
Can you share a story about a time when you faced a parenting challenge
Okay.
and overcame it in a way that brought you and your children closer together?
So yes, I can. My oldest son, me and his mother were not together.
Mm-hmm.
It was a messy situation. She was coming out of a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and in the state of Tennessee, when a child is born, the husband, because she wasn't out of the marriage yet,
Mm-hmm.
the husband is assumed to be the father,
Mm-hmm.
and so um, because of that, he had rights that I didn't have to my own child.
Right.
And I fought this case 6 years of his life.
You
This
said
this
6 years.
6 years. I
Wow.
mean, no judge would be nice enough to even give me,
Wow.
as a dad that wanted to be involved, um, and a man who clearly didn't want to be in my son's life, but he was out for revenge.
So your ex-partner's
Yes,
husband
husband. You're right.
had more paternal rights than you
Yep.
did,
And I did.
though you were actively
Even,
seeking.
even though I fought it for 6 years.
Wow.
So my son had severe asthma. They would give him visiting rights. So my son would have to go down to this man's house every other weekend, and he wouldn't give my son his asthma medicine, his inhaler, and things like that. I mean, it was things that really tested me to my core of, if I'm being transparent, I wanted to kill this man because you're hurting my seed,
Right.
because you know it's my seed, right? And that was I remember it being a really dark place. And I was in court, and at this point I'm begging the judge. I'm begging the judge to just give me a shot. Let me be in my son. I was already active. I was going to be in my son's life regardless. I asked this judge I needed him to recuse himself. I had my attorneys ask him to recuse himself. He did, thank God. And this other judge got on. And the moment we went in his courtroom, he said, "Why is this going on for so long? Sir, your guess is as good as mine." And he said, "Okay, well, you have no rights. And you're not even doing right by the child," to the ex-husband. And he said, "Sir, I'm going to give you your rights," like that. One time seeing me, gave me everything that I needed for 6 years. And in that time, I taught my son, me and my son had this thing we would say, "God got us and nothing can separate us." And so that's what we always would chant before he had to leave. He would cry, "I don't want to go." And I would say, "What did I say?" And we'd say, "God got us and nothing can separate us." And we'd pound. And so that was really a challenge. That was really a challenge for me as a dad to stay positive for my son, knowing the situation. But then right after that, I said, if you keep focused, we keep praying, it'll all be over soon. And it was. It took 6 years. I was drained, worn out, finances depleted, marriage on the rocks because I'm fighting this. I don't even have time to really enjoy her pregnancy. With Kingston was on the way, and it was just a lot, man. But I stuck in the fight, won, and ultimately got my son. And now my son lives with me full time. But it's so crazy that we had to go through all that. It was a really trying time when people would just say, "Well, just stop fighting it." Right. Maybe just stop fighting. You know, if he got a man in his life, you ain't got to fight it. You're telling me essentially to give up my child. No. Yeah. You know, my sin, my mess up shouldn't make my child be without me. You know what I mean? I'll fight. I'll deplete my finances fighting this case. But, you know, let that be my consequence. I will never not be in my son's life. And so that was something that I never forgot. I actually want to write a book about it, fighting that case for men who may be in a state like this. It's crazy that I had to fight for that many years, you know, to get that.
That's a very harrowing experience, and for it to last that long. And as surprising as that might sound to some of our listeners, your case is not the only one.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's why I feel like I got to speak out about it, because I've really debated about it. You know, for a minute it was about I'm gonna sue him, you know what I mean? But I was like, if nothing else, at least speaking out about it. That judge took me through it for years, and I mean, knew it. He knew it. Like, I mean, he was getting private calls from the ex-husband. It was just nuts. The whole situation was nuts.
Yeah, that is the fact that you have to prove.
Yeah.
Well, you're proving your interest. You're demonstrating your interest,
right,
and your commitment. Yeah, and that is not enough.
That wasn't enough
because somebody decides that is not enough. For no other reason, somebody else has decided that is not enough.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you want to say to the dads who might be going through a similar experience or other challenges? As we
just stay focused. You know, never underestimate your impact. Never give up on fighting for your child. I say that with all of the knowing all the mental fortitude that it takes to do that process, whether it be against the child's mother, the court, whatever the case be. Never, ever, ever. I don't care what it takes. Find people that are positive, get around them, and get back in the fight. But never stop fighting for your child. Never, ever stop fighting for your child. And that's what I'll say. You know, like I said, but you do have to get around people that are positive, because if not, it will overtake you. It'll overtake your brain. You're like, well, they're better off without me. And I've had guys say that I was just going to take myself out because they were better off without me. They weren't going to have me anyway, or I can get them anyway. Never do that. Don't give up on your child. Don't give up on yourself.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for this conversation. I look forward to connecting with you again, sir. Thank
you very much.
You've been listening to the Black Father's Pulse. I'm your host, Dr. Alvin Thomas. I'm a clinical psychologist, researcher, and director of the TriLab at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Views shared on this podcast are mine or that of my guest and are not associated with the university. Original music for our series was composed and performed by Micaiah De Silva, artwork by Isabella Acra. The podcast is produced by me and is supported by the kind contributions of you, the public, and advertisers. Follow me on Twitter at Dr_AT758, that's Dr_AT758, or the Black Father's Pulse podcast on Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe to the Black Father's Pulse podcast wherever you do your podcast listening, and don't forget to share and leave us a positive review.